Get these platforms up and running. All right, chat. And I didn't turn on the chat here. There's chat. Awesome. One sec. I'm just joining onto my own stream so I can make sure it's coming through okay. And we should be ready to go in just a moment. So far, so good. Here's chat. Whoa. That's not what I want. I had a sound coming through on my side. Cool. Well, let's get started here. So, yeah, it's been a it's been a little rough. I had to go for my another COVID vaccine yesterday, so I am just ending the sort of the fever stage. It's been pretty rough. Didn't get a lot of sleep last night, and then was at the office. Had to leave a little early. Just like waves of being feverish, so I think should be okay for now. And then very unfortunately, I went to go do a software engineering interview. Hey there on Twitch. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I thought the COVID vaccine stuff was done. But I need it for one of my uh, sort of medical checkpoints I had to do. So anyway, not really up to me. Kind of had to get it done. But I was shocked. And a little bit of backstory. So I'm from Canada. I'm in the U.S. and I didn't get a lot of my medical stuff transferred. So there was a couple other vaccines that were like, hey, like, do you have this? And I'm like, I know, I know I've been vaccinated for that, but like, I don't have it on record here. So give me that too. But yeah, COVID was one of them. They're like, hey, you're kind of overdue for another one of those. So whatever. I'm not going to get into like vax or no vax kind of thing. I just got to get it done. So, but yeah, it's funny. I've had COVID before, which is pretty rough, but surprisingly, if I literally for me, if I just took Advil, I was totally fine. And as soon as the Advil would wear off, then it was like pretty bad fevers and like, shaking from having fevers and stuff. So this was a pretty bad experience overnight. And I knew it too. Was good all day. As soon as I laid down to go to sleep, as soon as I got into bed, I was like, oh no, like I feel I feel the fever. So it's pretty crappy. But the worst part is that, like, obviously when you're in bed, like that's when I'm trying to sleep. I'm trying to rest and kind of recover for the next day. So it just makes the whole next day really rough. So anyway, doing a lot better now, which is good. Um, isn't having COVID and COVID vaccine the same in most countries? Said the same. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I just know that on paperwork, I don't have a choice. I have to show that it's done. So, but it feels the symptoms that I have from the vaccine are the exact same as when I had COVID. So, just been trying to stay on top of Advil and Tylenol. And I literally the same thing. I can tell as soon as it wears off because it's like I'm instantly like sweating and cold, and it's awful. But we're around in the end of that. I'm pretty sure overnight I'll wake up tomorrow and be totally fine. But it really sucked too. I was really looking forward. I had a software engineering interview for the podcast I do. So had someone, Emily from LinkedIn, one of my connections, we were meeting up and my internet was just crap. And I'm not really sure I haven't really diagnosed what was going on. So I'm hoping that the stream and everything is going okay. Uh, Thanks, Saddam. I appreciate it. So yeah, we'll get into the topic, but it's been just a kind of a rough day overall. So I'm hoping to end on a high note with the stream, kind of sit down and chat with you guys. And then tomorrow morning, actually, I'll be live coding. So it's 7 a.m. bright and early. That's why I'm really hoping that I have I'm recovered, I guess. And I'm just realizing some of the LinkedIn comments did not come through in the chat. Oh, actually, no, they did. They were from before the stream. So we're good. We're good. Okay. So I hate that when I'm trying to watch chat and I can't tell what's going on. So cool. Topic for today, though, is going to be, I hit a bit of a milestone, and this is kind of like it's a bit different than the normal, but I still want to kind of make it relevant for software engineering. So the milestone that I hit was for my newsletter was 52 issues. So I was pretty proud of that. So I wanted to spend some time talking about like kind of what that looks like and why even bother making content in the first place. So like anything I'm doing with streams and stuff like that, it's always I'm gonna try and tie it back to software engineering and things like that. So while the topic itself is very much about kind of hitting this milestone, at the same time, I want to make sure that if you're watching or listening to this, you're like, well, why is that relevant to me? Right. That's the whole point, is to try and have something relevant that you can take away. So um, I'm gonna kind of walk through what was going on. I have to mute another speaker. Enough of that. Got too many computers. But I'll walk through like kind of why I started creating content, and how that's relevant for software engineering, or for even for me in my role as a software engineering manager. So um, let's see. Okay, so I've shared this before, but so obviously if you're watching this, you know that like I'm creating content under my brand Dev Leader, and this actually started back in 2013, and I started creating content for a reason that I actually encourage a lot of other people to make content, and that's so that you can kind of learn in public, right? And there's a lot of cool things that happen as a side effect of this. On my podcast, I had Alex Zajac, who is the author of Hungry Minds newsletter. One of the things that he was sharing, and it kind of resonated with me, kind of because it's similar to like early on in when I started Dev Leader, was like for his newsletter, he does a lot of like curating of interesting articles, especially related to AI and stuff like that, and it kind of forces you to go out and learn and to stay up to date with things, and like you create this responsibility for yourself where you're like, hey, look, like I have to deliver the newsletter, right? Like I want to be able to put out content and be consistent with it. So you have to go do the work to go to be able to support that. So it was cool to hear him talking about that, because it reminded me like when I started Dev Leader, that's exactly what it was. So for context, it was my first job outside of my internship. So in university, I was very fortunate. I had hey Chris from Facebook. I had 6 internships in university, so 2 full years of work experience by the time I graduated. But when I started working at a startup outside of university, it was like right I don't know, like a few months into it, it was like, hey, look, like we need you to start leading teams, right? And it was very odd for me because like I've never done that. I've just started working, right? So um kind of an interesting experience. And I said like there's a lot of stuff obviously that I don't know about managing, like how to do one-on-ones, or one big like really common sort of challenges when you're an individual contributor. How do you like how do you go from being someone who writes code to like feeling like you can be effective with managing teams? Hey, Big Wally Wiggy on Twitch, good to see you. So this is a big like transition phase that if for a lot of engineering managers, a lot of them do start as like individual contributors, ICs, and go through this. So for me, I was like, I have a lot of work to do here. As in, I have no idea what I'm doing. So it was like I was really fortunate. I had a great HR leader, and she kind of pushed me in the direction of like, hey, here's resources, here's concepts to go learn about. And I was like, you know what? Like I'm gonna start blogging about this. And the goal, like I said, was like, well, twofold, right? It was I'm going to kind of force myself to go learning. Um, and then beyond that, like obviously if I'm learning and there's other people that are going through the same journey as me. So for on Twitch there, so yeah, quick summary. You haven't missed too much. Just kind of giving a recap for, and I should share this in the chat actually. So this is the newsletter article I'm referring to. I was kind of mentioning the topic for this stream is a little bit unique because I always try to talk about software engineering, but kind of reflecting on basically 52 weeks of having a software engineering newsletter go out. And I want to share why I started creating content, because like it's probably, I'm assuming if you're watching this, you're into software development or some sort of related field. Maybe you just kind of stumbled upon my stream, but I want to share why I think there's value in being able to put out content. And for me at least, I'm going to talk about how that really transformed my life, even though I feel like I've been pretty successful in my career already. Um, so I started this Dev Leader blog, and I was just trying to write some thoughts down. Sometimes it was code, sometimes it was Awesome, Brad. Good to hear that. Sometimes it was code in my articles. Sometimes it was like, here's what I'm thinking for organizing teams and stuff. But like, total transparency. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just writing my thoughts down. And I, like, it feels kind of embarrassing to say, but like, I gave up on it. And this is in 2013. Like, this is a long time ago. I started blogging and I gave up on it after a few months. And I was like, you know what? Like, it takes a lot of time and effort. I'm trying to curate these articles, put out a blog post on like my notes on the articles and stuff, like why you should read them. And I'm like, I kind of started to feel like, why am I doing this? Because um, there's no like feedback on it. It's like, I don't know if anyone's even reading this. Like, what's the point? And in hindsight, like it's easy for me to say now, but it's like, Nick, like that wasn't the right motivator, right? Like if all that I was looking for was, people to be able to like comment on it and like and follow and stuff, it's like that's not the right motivator. So for me, the reason, and I want to share this with people because like I'm going to talk more about the benefits and stuff, but at the end of 2022, I don't know exactly what it was that kind of triggered in my head, but as a C sharp, like I C sharp developer by, at heart, I am a software engineering manager, but if I'm coding, I'm coding in C sharp at home and stuff. So there's two YouTubers that I really like to watch, and one's Nick Chapsis and one is Milan Jovanovic, and both really awesome .NET YouTubers. I really look up to them. Great, huge channels, a lot of success, and I've shared this with both of them. And every time I say this, I always feel like it's going to come across the wrong way. But I remember, like at the end of 2022, I was reflecting on it, and I was like, you know what, like if they can do it, like I can do it. And the reason I don't like saying it because it sounds like it's kind of backwards. Like it's not that I don't think they're talented. Like I think they're amazingly talented, right? They do great work. It's not that I think that it's easy, but I'm like I think I can do this. Like I think it was just eye opening for me that like there's two examples of these guys, and what is it that they're doing? Well, they're showing up regularly, putting out content. And I just remember being like, I can do that. Like if there's one thing that I feel like I'm very good at, it's doing boring repetitive stuff. Like one of my hobbies for as long as I've been programming has been bodybuilding. You know what's really boring? Bodybuilding. You eat the same stuff every day. At least I did, right? It's like you're going to the gym all the time, eating the same things all the time, and I'm like, I like the routine. I'm very good at being consistent with this stuff. So I was like, I'm gonna set a goal, and I was like, I'm gonna put out 3 YouTube videos every week, 3 long form YouTube videos every week. I'm gonna do this because these guys have been very successful at it, and I think I can do this too. Now, spoiler alert, it's been real hard. It's been very hard to do that, but it's also been extremely rewarding. So with these guys, like I said, they've been very successful. They've been at it for a long time though. And I think this is the biggest misconception that people have is like, and certainly why I kind of failed the first time through, but like you need to be consistent. You just have to be consistent. If you're not, like, you're never going to get anywhere. So I think people fail because they give up too soon because of their expectations on it. So I decided I was going to do this. And, partway through the year, I guess it would have been roughly 1 year ago right now, I started adding in more content, right? So I'm going to do 3 YouTube videos a week. And then I'm going to post a short video every day. On TikTok, I post 3 short videos a day. I'll talk about this in a little bit, but I was getting to the point where I was putting out 6 blog posts a week, plus my newsletter, plus all the posts you see on LinkedIn. So I basically started ramping up content, like starting by struggling to get my 3 YouTube videos a week to now I've taken a step back on the blogs because I'm writing more software at home. But really, the point that I'm trying to get across here was that it's been a year, or I guess like 18 months now, of just trying to be consistently building up how much content I'm putting out. So the newsletter part has been very interesting. I feel like I've had feedback on my newsletter. I've had other creators that will say like, "Hey, like you should structure your newsletter differently," um, and it's not that I don't think the feedback is valuable, but at the same time, I think I don't want to just be another cookie cutter, do the same thing everyone else is doing. So I kind of like having um, I just like making sure that I'm doing it the way that I want to do it, and if that means it's going to be a little slower, okay, but I just don't want to end up being a copy of someone else. Um, and then yeah, Big Wally Wig. I think that's the max. More than that, content quality will drop. Yeah. So, and by the end of my stream here, I'll be talking about ways that I've been trying to work at optimizing all of this, because throughout this journey, it's been every time that I find that I can get time back by optimizing my process, I end up trying to create more content, a different content, or go onto a different platform. So I've been doing that as a system for like 18 months now, and that's what's allowed me to scale to being able to create the content that I've been creating. So certainly what I don't want to say is like I don't want people to hear me saying this like I think I'm a master at creating content. Like there's plenty of people out there that have like what I would say is like more, call it like viral content for the sake of engagement. Like they're way better at doing it, or people that might explain concepts way better than me, and that's okay. Like I think for me, what's really important is that I've been able to do more and be consistent over time. So that's really what I've been after. Okay, so the newsletter part, like I said, has been challenging because like I don't know for those watching, if you try to grow a newsletter, it's tedious, right? It's really challenging to get people kind of bought into like want to subscribe and like and read what you have to say every week. It's hard to grow a YouTube channel. It's hard to grow on any platform. And I think one of my really big takeaways that's been kind of like, I want to say it's been demoralizing in some way. Like it always catches me where, and even recently, seeing like seeing people have a lot of success in a very short period of time, it stands out to me because I go like, I've been trying so hard and putting in so much work. Like, why? Like it feels so unfair, but it's a really dangerous trap to get into. So I wanted to share this with folks as well, because if you're like, hey, like, I want to start creating content, I think it would be fun. I've had people reach out to me and say like, hey, I'm thinking about learning this language, and I was thinking about like documenting the journey with making videos or writing posts about it. Like absolutely, I highly encourage it. But when you start comparing your own sort of growth, then it's really challenging, right? You compare your growth to someone else's, and it's just not gonna. You're setting yourself up for disappointment. And I just realized I was ignoring the Instagram chat. I don't know if Brad, you're still on the chat. Trident Fine Finishes. Good to see you, Brad. Miss you, buddy. Um, I see Dark Devil 1922. I might have missed, you might have already left, sorry, but what is Git? Git is a source control system, so it's arguably the most popular tool used for source control, to be able to take snapshots of code, push it up to a central repository. People can clone it down and stuff like that. So that's a tool that gets used. Sorry, I realized that Instagram chat's not shared in the in the common chat. So sorry, that seems super random. Okay, so the whole point here is content scaling, right? And that's what I've been doing the past 18 months. And kind of going to the next part in my newsletter here was like, I think on the surface, someone might say like, hey, Xcoding, good to see you. Someone might say like, why are you bothering with this? Like, I kind of said, you know, I feel like I've been successful in my career. I'm happy working at Microsoft. Like, you know, I do interesting work. I have challenging work. I love the people I work with. They pay me well. Like all these things are good, right? These are good things. So like, why am I going out and spending time creating content? And for me, like, again, kind of going back to the roots here, it lets me stay sharp or sharper than I would otherwise. And the other thing is like, it's fulfilling for me. And this isn't going to be the same for everyone, right? But like, I get a lot of fulfillment out of being able to help people. And sometimes as a content creator, like, and I say sometimes, most of the time, I have no idea if what I'm putting out there helps. And that makes it really challenging because, I'll spend however much time, recording videos to go make tutorials and stuff, write articles. Um, I've Part of my content scaling was I hired a video editor. So every month, every month on YouTube, I lose like basically $400 to $750 a month. Like I don't make money from YouTube. I make $2. I made it up to $2 a day on YouTube. But I spend, like almost $5,000 a month having my videos edited. So I am literally losing money on YouTube, but I'm doing it because like I want to create my brand. I want to reach more people and I want to help. Like that makes me feel good. So a lot of the time when we're creating content, you don't have such feedback, right? It's not like you put out a video and as soon as the video's out, it's like, oh, here's a million people being like, oh, thank you so much. This changed my life. It's like it's pretty rare. It's pretty rare you get that kind of feedback, but it changes everything. Like it only takes one person to be like, hey, like I watched that and like that's what I needed to hear. I've had colleagues at Microsoft, like I don't even work with them directly, but on different teams and stuff that I don't want to say more than acquaintances with, like they're kind of partner teams. And I've had someone reach out to me and said like, hey, like I accidentally like found myself like going down the rabbit hole, like binging your shorts. And I remember they were like, they emailed me and they were like, hey, like I just wanted to let you know, like I needed that. Like I needed to hear some of the things you were saying. And I was like, man, like you always like for me, I always kind of feel like, is it worth it? Like, should I give up? But it only takes one person to say like, thank you so much. And it's like you have momentum for another month easily. So our simple humor, you mentioned learning in the open. So create content like you are the audience instead of others. Is it better to create detailed and big posts or small and short? Okay, so a couple things here, right? So I do highly recommend. Obviously, this is different for individuals, right? But I highly recommend learning in public. The one thing that I like to add as a disclaimer is that what I don't encourage is if you're going to learn in public, you don't want to act like an expert. So if I'm our simple humor, I'm not sure, maybe what your focus is, but just to give you an example, right? So you're like, I'm going to learn Python. Great. Okay. So what I don't recommend is you start learning Python and then you go write posts like you are a Python expert, because what happens is people that are very good at Python would be able to see right through that. And what happens is that you should expect you're going to make mistakes. This is the way that we learn, is we make mistakes, they get corrected, we go, oh, okay, we learn from it, we move on. But when you're trying to act like an expert, you're kind of like, you're masquerading as an expert, and someone's like, hey man, like that's just not right. Like you will have people on the internet that will tear you apart for it. So instead, because there's no benefit to acting like an expert. And I think that you can go a really long way if you're just like, here's the things that I'm learning and like here's my take on it, and you can literally leverage the internet to be like, here's my learnings, and then have people be like, hey, like that's great, that sounds like it makes sense, really cool. Or you'll have people that are like, I don't think so, here's a different perspective on it. And when you can't avoid the trolls and the mean people, right? It's going to happen. And when they show up, the nice thing is that you're like, I'm just giving you the example of what I think that I'm learning. I'm not trying to tell you it's this way only, right? So I think you can leverage it to learn a lot from the people that will engage with your content. And what's really cool too, and I don't know a really good way to explain this, but if you think about your journey on something, if you're always kind of, you can do this many different ways, but if you're setting your audience to be like the people that are a couple of steps behind you, let's say, what's really cool is like there are a lot of people that are a couple of steps behind you. So it's really cool that you can put some content out, aim it at people a couple of steps behind you, and then that way they're like, hey, this is very relevant. Like I feel like I can tag along with this. So I hope that helps. The next part was, is it better to create detailed and big posts or small and short? Um, Depends what you mean by better, right? So what's the goal? If the goal is engagement, depends on the platform. And I would also say that, oddly enough, what can make a really big difference, especially if you're thinking LinkedIn, for example, if you're going to make a LinkedIn post, the shape of your post sounds weird to say, but the structure and the shape, like there are tons of things, and I'm not very good at this. I understand the concepts, but like I'm still not great at it. Uh, the shape can go a long way. So of course, one of the most important things for any post is like the very first line that you have. Like it's kind of challenging because this starts getting more into like marketing kind of things, and like creative writing, but the goal of your first line is to capture people's attention. You want to make them have some type of reaction to it, so they feel like they're pulled in to go read more. Um, and sorry, I see Dev Davies on TikTok has a question, so I'm going to come back to that in just a sec. I don't want to ignore you. But the post shape can make a lot. You want to capture people's attention, and there's a concept of like rehooking people, right? So I often find that like LinkedIn is getting more challenging in my opinion. Like the educational content, the value of that on LinkedIn seems to be dropping rapidly, and it's kind of frustrating. So like I noticed there's like posts that will be, they call them carousel posts, right? A carousel post on LinkedIn is a PDF. That's all it is, but it allows you to kind of swipe through it. And I've seen these carousel posts get recycled and they have like the most trivial things in them. And for some reason, the engagement is obscenely high. I've seen people posting pictures of like like extremely basic programming concepts, and again the engagement's extremely high. So it's like, depends. When you say best, are you talking about engagement? If so, it's almost like you kind of have to play the social media game, and I struggle with that because, and I'll get more to this in my article here, but like I'm not an influencer. My goal in my career and my life is like I'm not going to be a social media influencer. I don't like spending time on social media. So for me, it's not a good strategy. For you, if you're interested in getting engagement and stuff like that, you kind of have to put a little bit of time into seeing how really successful posts, like look at how they're structured, look at how people are hooking the reader, what got your attention, and there's like sort of patterns that you can pick up on. So just that's my take. So small or big, it's like a variety, right? Different platforms, like the type of content you post will have different sort of impression rates. So for me, like on LinkedIn, I will post pictures, text, I will post videos. Links don't do well. You get penalized for putting a link in the post. Um, LinkedIn says no, but everyone who's collected data says yes. I can attest to that. Anecdotally, if I put a link in, I get crushed for impressions. Um, so there's lots of little strategies and things like that, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I would say create the content that you would want to read, that you feel like makes you feel good to put out there. I think by being true to that, you will find that you'll grow an audience of people that are interested in what you're putting out there. There's little tweaks and hacks that you can do to try and capture more engagement, though. So I hope that helps. Um, Yeah, okay. So Dev Davies on TikTok is saying, I heard someone say that you learn something by building a project with it. How do you do that? So, yes. So I think this is one of the best ways to learn. And the reason why it ends up being a really good way to learn is a couple reasons. One is that you're going to be getting stuck, which you might say, well, I don't want to get stuck. That doesn't sound fun. But that's the point. If someone was just giving you the answers, you don't actually learn. Will you make progress on things? Sure. Will you learn them well? Probably not as well as if you got stuck and had to kind of unstick yourself. So that's one of the reasons why it's very beneficial to be trying to build things. Another one is that by genuinely building things and not just watching videos or reading articles, you're practicing actual software development. So This is one of the reasons why with like lead code, for example, right? I'm like, lead code, you can go solving problems that people have laid out for you, but I'm like, that's a very different skill set than building an application and then like trying to maintain it and support it. Like, it's just, I find a lot of like lead code stuff does not translate well into more general software engineering stuff. So building projects, in my opinion, is the most applicable because it's what you're doing when you get a job. And the other thing is that getting stuck process. So handful of different ways to do it. If you go on my YouTube channel, which is just a dev leader on YouTube, you can search just on my channel, search projects. I have a couple of videos on how, like, a couple example projects you can get started with. Same on my website, devleader.ca. If you search projects there, I have a couple of articles for how to brainstorm projects. Someone I love giving a shout out to on here is John Cricket. He has coding challenges as a newsletter. Very awesome for getting you set up for just like, here's a thing to go build, right? It doesn't matter what language. Here's an example of something to go build. Try it out. Trying to think if there's anything else on that. Something worth mentioning is that when you're focused on this kind of thing, I like reminding people like what your goal is, which sounds funny, but your goal with building projects is not, I guess it depends on the person, but if you're trying to learn, your goal is not to make money with it. Your goal is to learn, right? So I think a lot of people get caught up and they're like, well, I don't know what project to go build because I don't have a business idea. And like, I have to think of something novel. And I'm like, no, hit the brakes. Like, it's not like, what am I going to build that's going to make me money? Because it's not your goal. Your goal is to practice things, to learn things. John Vandeveer, who has Latterly.io, when I was interviewing him, one of the things he said really resonated with me because it's how I approach learning in my own projects. He suggests, if you think about a few variables that you have to work with, right? So say you know a programming language and you're comfortable with it, and you know a tech stack, or a database, that you can interact with. I highly recommend you pick a couple of those types of variables and keep them fixed, and then one or two other variables that are different. So, for example, for me, it's like I know C#, I know ASP.NET Core, and I'm familiar, like I've used Postgres and MySQL. And more recently, I guess it's a few months back, I was like, you know what I don't know a lot of? MongoDB. So I'm going to make sure that I try building my next project, and I'm going to use MongoDB as the database. Like, why? It's a personal project I'm just trying to learn with. So I keep a couple variables consistent, C# so that I can program effectively, ASP.NET Core because I can navigate it, and the database will be the weird thing for me. So I'm going to spend some time learning that. On Twitch, I messed around so long worrying about my idea if it was novel when I was a student when I should have just cloned Reddit or YouTube. Yep, this is 100% the recommendation, right? So I don't know, it was on one of my last streams. I told someone like clone Instagram. And I said, the thing you'll probably say is, well, Nick, I don't know how to build Instagram. That seems really complicated. And I go, okay, yeah, break it down into pieces, right? Like, you're going to need a UI. You're probably going to need a database. You're going to need authentication. Like, you keep breaking these things down into smaller pieces. And maybe the first thing you go build is just like, I'm going to make a console application that can read and write records to a database. Right? That's not Instagram, but it's a piece. It's a piece in your Instagram that you're going to go build. Cool. Or you might start with the front end. You're like, I just want to be able to kind of lay things out, design it, see if I can get some interactions. And I'm going to fake all of the data and everything else. Like, cool. Just break it down into small pieces and play with it. Because the goal, it's different if you're trying to have something in a portfolio and you want to like show it off. But even for me, like, okay, number one is like, if it's for learning, spend the time learning the thing. I don't care if you finish the project or not. Like, if you're getting the learning out of it, that's what matters. When it comes to building portfolios, even for me, like if someone had on their resume, like they were building some things and I looked at their GitHub or something and like they weren't finished working products, I would still like want to hear about them. I'd go, hey, it was really cool that you picked React and this other thing. Like, tell me why you, why did you want to use this as a database? Or like, why did you pick React? Or like, why did you, I noticed that you're using this kind of thing in your design. Like, why did you do that? And I just want to like learn, right? I don't care. I don't care that you don't have a million users on your app that's a calculator, right? Like, I just want to hear about how you were thinking through things and stuff. So portfolio kind of stuff, that's what I'm interested in. But ultimately for building projects, I think you just want to focus on, getting the learning out of it. So I hope that helps. Any advice for someone transitioning from primarily proprietary stack, think COBOL, to a modern software development job? Been doing portfolio projects, not sure how to present interview, as I feel 2 years of experience here is not comparable to 2 years experience elsewhere. Okay. I do use continuous integration, deployment, agile unit testing. Yep, all these things are good. So the thing is, like, I think like any programming language, if you understand the fundamentals, like it's going to be applicable in another one. So that's my first piece of advice, is that maybe don't worry too much about that. I think you'll have you're not going to have an issue picking up something else, especially if you get the fundamentals down. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think there's a couple other challenges that you have to navigate here. One is just like the job market's like extremely difficult right now. So that is something I don't have a lot of great advice on, because it's like kind of like outside of our control. So volume can be your friend there. Networking can be your other friend there. So I think there's some things you could do around that. Like I said, don't worry so much about. I'll give you an example. I love sharing this, but like I work at Microsoft. I managed 2 teams in deployment within Substrate before, and now I'm managing one on our routing and sort of like firewalling and DDoS protection side of things. And out of those teams, I think I've had that was a new hire. I've had one person that knew C#. One. And like I didn't even interview these people, right? So it's not even my own bias of like, oh, don't worry, like I'll have no problem teaching them. Not even my own bias. Microsoft said these people are great. They have prior programming experience. They'll pick up C#, and they're totally right. It's totally fine. So I don't think it's about the language, in my opinion, right? Does it help? Sure, especially at small companies. When small companies are like, look, it's a really big risk for us to take on someone if they're not a good fit, or we have to spend a lot of time ramping them up. Like that could be catastrophic for a small company, right? Yeah. So as you're saying, focus more on what software development lifecycle tooling. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. All of it is critical, right? And I think one thing I'd recommend is like, so the other sort of challenge that you're going to be facing is how do you kind of stand out, right? That's one of the biggest challenges. And there's different parts to this, but I would say like standing out on a resume, the big thing that you can do there is talk about impact. That's my recommendation, right? So some things like the technologies and stuff like that, they can be great keywords when they're being run through filters. But if a human's reading your resume, like if you say like, I worked on this system, and they're like, okay, cool. I don't know what that system does. Sounds neat. Like kind of make it so that someone has no question about the impact you had, right? Even if you're like, I optimized this process, like, okay, like, why does that matter? And how much did you optimize it? I saved 30% on our build time, which ended up saving us, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and got developers back this much time in their builds, which happened every day for all of these developers across these teams. So like, developer agility was improved by this much. Like, that's pretty cool. Okay. And another thing too is like, if you're saying I worked on this team and my team did this, it's like, okay, well, what part did you do? because it might be very obvious to you. You might be like, oh yeah, I worked on this cool team, and you know the stuff you built or that you were responsible for, but the way you end up writing it is like, my team, like, we built this thing, and you're not wrong. Like, your team did build it, but someone reading your resume, like, they don't know that. And you might be able to explain it in an interview, but I would say, like, try to, hyper focus on, like, these are the impacts that I had. So hope that helps. Let me know though. And then, okay, so I'm looking for a new laptop. uh I'm not sure on laptops, to be honest. I have an Alienware one here, and I'm not sure if I'm ever going to buy an Alienware again. I had a lot of audio issues, surprisingly. But yeah, I think you could. There's probably I think it's Prime Day tomorrow, so maybe hop on Amazon and just look. I don't know what the latest stuff is, but there's usually a sweet spot, right? If you want something that's reasonably performant, if you look at the most expensive stuff, you can take a couple steps back for the latest tech and like save, like, I don't know, like 50% off the latest stuff and go a couple generations back, and it's a really good sweet spot to hit. Um, I really feel like creating content for me would be to get feedback, network, yeah, nodding as I'm reading this, have conversations, jumpstart problem areas, personal projects. Is there something better than creating content? Okay, well, I think this is a really good question, kind of comment. Um, let me move a little bit further ahead in my newsletter here. So on this point, I think it's so good because it's like, what are the benefits out of getting it, right? So in my newsletter, I wrote learning. I've already kind of talked about that. The next point I said was networking, and in the article I said I can't stress this enough. I've met an incredible number of awesome people in the last 18 months. Um, I kind of gave a shout out to some of these people, and I'll explain a little bit more. I wrote income. So depending on what your goals are and stuff, like, yes, you can make money from posting content online. I shared with you that for my YouTube stuff, I literally lose money, like, purely on YouTube. Fortunately, like, I'm not in a spot where I can't afford to do that. So I am very fortunate that I can sort of take my own money, invest that into my own YouTube production. So that's going to look different for different people. I'm not trying to brag about it. I'm just trying to give you some insight into how I get some of my time back. I was editing my own videos, and I was like, to give you an example, I'm live streaming right now for 2 hours, and I'm live streaming in the morning for 2 hours. I'm able to do that because I pay someone to edit my other YouTube videos. So spend some money to be able to get more time back. And it's only because I'm fortunate enough to be in that situation. Um, you can post articles on Medium. Medium has a $5 a month, $5 a month? Yeah, $5 a month fee if you go for the Medium, like, sort of premium paid version. But what's really cool is that, like, so I haven't written articles in months now because I've been coding more. And my ROI on an article, it's a lot of time to write and not a lot of sort of side effect that's positive. It just takes a lot to do. And I still am profitable on Medium. And we're talking, like, it's not a lot of money, but, like, I think last month, just for transparency, I don't like talking about money because it sounds like I've seen people do this and they brag about how much money they make, and it's like, feels kind of gross. But, like, I made $15 in profit from Medium, right? And I didn't write an article last week or last couple months. So making $15 a month from not doing anything, cool. Like, it doesn't do much, but it's still profit, and it's passive. Courses are another one. So for me personally, the income that I have from social media is my course creation. And I'm gonna kind of, I'll move along through here, but I wanted to share with you on the networking side of things, right? I wanted to share how impactful this has been for me personally. Okay, so it's been 18 months of creating content. 52 weeks or 52 issues of a newsletter. There's a couple times I think I had to miss, just from, I think, when I was getting married. I don't think I put a newsletter out. My wife probably would have had a comment about that. And I think on our honeymoon, I think I might have scheduled one. But anyway, it only took me a couple of months of making YouTube videos. And again, you guys might not know who this is. But I mentioned earlier, like Nick Chaps, this is one of the people that I looked up to a lot in YouTube, because he's got like 300,000 subscribers, does all the .NET and C# stuff you could think of. And it only took me a couple of months of making YouTube content, and Nick Chaps has messaged me. And he said, I'd like you to consider making courses for me. And I remember vividly being like, oh, great. This is like when Elon Musk, messages you on Twitter. Like, it's not Elon. And, he had said like, hey, do you want to get on a Discord call and talk about this? And I just remember thinking like, how is this person going to scam me? That was what was going through my head, is how is this person going to scam me? Because there's no way it's the person I think it is. And I was thinking more and more, and I'm like, I can't see the risk. And also, like, what if it is really him? And sure enough, I got on a Discord call and it was him. And for me, that was super cool, because this is like I said, this is one of the people that I was like, I'm making YouTube videos because I want to be able to do what this guy is doing, because it's so awesome that he's been successful at it. And he's one of the people that reached out to me to make courses. So, and I should, to kind of link this all together, my course sales are the only reason that I'm able to keep making content, that I can pay for my YouTube stuff every month, right? It's the only reason I'm able to do that is because of course sales. And it's thanks to Nick Chaps for doing that. I want to go back. I don't want to leave Dev Davies hanging here on TikTok with his question. So my question is really on how to start. So his question earlier was, if you have you want to get started on a project, because projects are good ways to learn. Say I don't know Java, for example, how do I move from the point of not knowing anything in Java to building a project in Java? So this is kind of tricky. And this is where I would say, depending on the person, like if you know other programming languages already, it might not be so bad. If you don't know any programming languages and you're just getting started, you might have to go through a couple tutorials to see the syntax and build like really, really simple things, just so you can practice like writing loops, if statements, and things like that. But I would say, like, if you know, like, one of the ways that I learn really well is taking something that exists already, clone a repository down, get it to build, go run it, and then start changing code. And for me personally, that works really well because it's already working, and I can start tweaking things and saying like, well, I can tell by the syntax here, here's what this looks like. And, what if I just want to change the text here? Like, is it really as simple as, changing this string? Or if I want to change it so that I'm showing content on the right side of the screen, or, just playing around with working code for me is one of the best ways that I learn. So again, if you're not familiar with the language, that could be a great way, is that you start with something that is functional, mess around with it. Or if you're starting from scratch, you might have to kind of do the very basics. And then, so on Twitch, in my opinion, taking some programming courses at college will get you bootstrapped. Yeah. Paid to go to community college for 2 years. There you go. Nice. So yeah, I think it depends kind of on your point in your learning process, right? But I personally, like, when I create content, I try to cover as many angles as I can. So if you're the kind of person that likes to read about things, like, I have articles. If you want to watch tutorials, I got tutorials. Courses, I always feel like a little slimy with courses, because it's like, I want to help people, and it's like, well, then why are you pushing courses and trying to take our money if you're just trying to help? And I'm like, look, some people need an accountability piece. I've shared this before, and I kind of said earlier on the stream, like, bodybuilding's been a really big hobby of mine, and I've been in the gym as long as I've been programming, which is kind of funny, right? I don't look like Mr. Olympia, unfortunately, but I've been doing it just as long as I've been programming, so that's over 20 years. And even for me, like, in the past few years, like, I hired a coach, not because it was like, oh, this person's going to teach me all these things that I've never even thought about and revolutionize how I think. Like, that's nice if they can give me some different perspective, but it was an accountability thing for me. So I think courses can give that kind of thing for some people, where it's like, look, I paid for this. I want to make sure that I'm doing the work for it. So a bunch of different angles there. So on content creation, the networking part has been tremendous. Like I said, that relationship with Nick Chaps is in the beginning. just really helped, right? I feel like if I wouldn't have had that, it would have been hard for me to, fortunately I'm paid well and I can support my own kind of content creation, but it would have been more challenging and kind of felt like, is it really worth it? So that was really cool to have. I mentioned earlier, like Milan Jovanovic is one of the other big .NET YouTubers, and like, it's really cool because like I message him on LinkedIn and stuff, and we have conversations, and I never thought that that would be the case. Like I am not. I'm trying to say this. Like I'm not special. What I'm doing is not special. I have experiences. Everyone who's watching this has different life experiences, right? My experiences are not better than yours. They're different. All that I'm doing is being consistent and putting out content and sharing what I'm learning. So just by doing that, I'm trying to tell you that that's all that I'm doing, being consistent, and it's led to these opportunities where I get to meet these people. If you're on LinkedIn a lot, and especially in the tech space, there's it's funny. I just said Milan Jovanovic. There's also Milan Milanovic. There's too many Milans. But Dr. Milan Milanovic is very big on LinkedIn for the tech creators. But I've been able to kind of chat back and forth with him. He let me be a guest on one of his newsletters. Like that was super cool. I've already gave a shout out to John Cricket for his coding challenges newsletter, but I've been able to interview him. He's interviewed me. Like, being able to chat with him is really cool. I don't know how many people are .NET enthusiasts, so it's kind of funny. I'm about to name drop some .NET people, but you might be like kind of like my wife, where she's like, I don't know who these people are. I don't care. But Scott Hanselman and David Fowler are two huge names from Microsoft, and they both agreed to come on my podcast separately. And like, again, I'm not special. I'm not doing something that other people cannot be doing, right? I'm just taking my life experiences and applying them to the content that I'm creating. So you can be doing the exact same thing. The biggest thing is consistency. If you're just consistent and you keep putting out content and you keep trying to make it a little bit better, you will absolutely do well. I'm still like very early in this process. I'm not trying to say like I've won at creating content. My channel is small. Like I don't have a ridiculous LinkedIn following. Like I'm trying to do all of these things. But like you just have to be consistent. Question for on YouTube. So what engagement do you do outside of content creation? Do you talk at conferences and hackathons? Yeah, so I actually, one of the things that I wrote on my newsletter is I just got a speaking opportunity. So actually, this is another one of those things, like it's not paid for, but I'm going to use, because my course sales are, I have a business to be able to do that now. So I will take proceeds from course sales. I'm flying myself out to Dallas. I live in just north of Seattle, so I'm paying to fly myself out to Dallas to go speak at a conference, or I guess it's like a meetup, right? So it's not even like a huge event, but that's on the 23rd, so next week, and I'm going to be. I haven't revealed the topic. I did a poll, and it's a bit. I should be transparent about this. I did a poll about the topic, and it was a bit of a social experiment. And I asked people, because these are two things that I really love to talk about. I said, what do you want my talk to be about? Do you want it to be about plugin architecture or testing? Now, what do you think people picked? Yeah, people don't like hearing about testing. It's kind of funny. It's like, testing again. So more people, it was pretty close actually. More people did vote plugin architecture, so I'll probably do that. So to your question on YouTube there, like I haven't done a whole lot, but that's sort of the next thing. I have been focused on different forms of content creation. So live streams are new for me. Live streams are a very new thing. So I've been doing these talks on Monday nights. It's started at 9 p.m. PST. It's what, 3 months now ish, something like that, 4 months maybe. So that's been a new thing. And then I was periodically trying to get some coding live streams, and I think last week or the week before was my first one where I said, you know what, Tuesday mornings before work, that's gonna be my official coding live stream day. So that's how I've been approaching things, is just different forms of content. I am going to try the public speaking thing. I should, make note, like, historically, I have been afraid to public speak, and I did a lot of negative self talk, like, hey, I'm bad at it. That's why I don't do it. And I've been learning, like, the more you tell yourself that you're bad at something, the more the more you're going to be right, because you're going to avoid it and not practice it. So I think from creating videos and live streaming and stuff, like, can I sit here honestly and say to myself now, like, hey, Nick, like, you're bad at public speaking? I think the answer to that is no, I'm not bad at it. Does it make me uncomfortable? Like, yeah. But when's the last time I did public speaking? Like, not to a camera like this, right? When's the last time I did that? I couldn't tell you. It's been 6 years? More? 8 years? Somewhere in there? Give or take a couple years. So, like, yeah, like, if you don't do it, you're not going to be comfortable with it. So for me, that's going to be my first kind of attempt to try and see how I feel about it. I'm going to see. So we'll, that'll be my first attempt, and I, might look for more. Currently I'm unable to travel outside of the US, just on some visa stuff. So I'll wait and see if there's more. It would be really cool to go over to, like, there's some cool conferences in Europe. It'd be cool to go speak at those. So I'll have to see. Um, it's funny. You said have looked into attending that conference. It's funny because, like, every time I saw that on Twitter, I'm like, I don't know what this is, and I never really looked into it, but it just from the name, I couldn't tell if it was serious or not. So I don't know the details about that conference. So might be something I have to check into. Okay. Now, what was the other thing? I'm getting close to, I like kind of switching over to Reddit around halfway through the 2 hour mark. So I'm going to wrap up the newsletter piece, but the other thing I wanted to mention, and this is like sort of value for content creation, and I think it's important to share this because I don't think that people realize, like, how valuable it could be depending on the individual. But I said earlier on this stream, like, I feel like I've been successful in my career. Like, I could have just not done the content creation part, and, like, financially, like, things would be fine. They'd be great. Like, I don't have to worry about that. I could work on other stuff. Sure. But I was surprised by this myself, which is why I want to share it with you. So I strongly believe that my content creation afforded me the opportunity to switch teams at Microsoft. And I say this because up until my team change, I hadn't really been going to the office much. I've been basically remote work because my previous team, basically everyone worked remote. So there's no point as a manager going into the office just to call people. It seems kind of silly. But there were people in leadership positions that would comment about, the videos that I would put up on LinkedIn, like people that I rarely interacted with because they are in leadership positions. There was one situation where someone in a leadership position started a meeting with like 50 people and said, hey, look, Nick's on the call. Like, everyone, if you haven't gone and watched Nick's videos, you should go watch them. And she ended the meeting the same way, right? Like, it was telling me, like, even if you're not getting viral videos and stuff, like, people are watching this stuff. People that you don't think are watching this stuff, they're watching. And that was like a little seed up here where it's like, okay, like, this is valuable. I'm reading this TikTok message. Hey, Nick, who is talking behind? I don't know what that means. Sorry, can you rephrase the question? I can try to answer. So when it comes to creating content, like, you're going to have the obvious audience, which are the people that are interacting with your content, but there's lots of people that are seeing your content, right? I responded to a Reddit thread about Rust, Microsoft using Rust for some things because someone took a job posting in their defense, like, the job posting maybe wasn't worded so well, but there was this thread on Reddit where people were like, oh, look, Microsoft is jumping ship for .NET. And I said, no. I said, I have one of the teams that's going to be using Rust. And like, no, we're not jumping ship from .NET. We're building something that's specifically going to benefit from using Rust. I was trying to elaborate on this Reddit thread. Reddit's a totally toxic place, which is why we're going there real soon. And I got an email from like an executive at Microsoft in my work email. Like literally, one of the executives was reading Reddit and saw my comment. And to say like, thank you for like, for trying to help de-escalate that. And it's like, people read your stuff. People watch your videos. So I think that basically I was kind of scouted for the team that I'm on now because people were able to see that I was putting out content. They could identify me and they were like, hey, it seems like this person would be a good fit. Right? So I share this with you because I've before content, like I've been able to do well in my career. And this was something that even on top of that, even just from making videos and being consistent, someone was able to say, hey, look at this guy. Like, he's talking about interesting things. We're aligned with that. We should talk. So, again, I'm not special. I just got a camera and I get in front of it regularly. So you could be doing the same thing. Okay. Oh, Glorabeth, it's good to see you. I didn't realize you're in the chat here. Sorry. I started watching your YouTube content, started with some of the interviews and the intro to software engineering and some new to C#. Do you have a suggestion on which playlist to start with? Good question. How new to C#? Because I don't know if I have this playlist that is it's kind of like, it's called, I think it's called beginner programming. I'm looking it up, sorry. But there's some stuff that's kind of leaked into there that maybe isn't like super beginner. It's kind of hard to classify. But I'm going to put this in the chat. Hopefully it comes through properly. I think this is the one that I would recommend. There's probably, like I said, some things in there that are maybe a little bit more advanced. But I think if you go through the playlist, you can probably jump around. There's some stuff in there like using different collection types. So like, why would you use a dictionary versus a list versus an array? How do iterators work? So if you're using for each loops on top of IEnumerables, some of that stuff might sound like it's a little bit of sorcery, but like these are some concepts you'll see pretty early on. Something I recommend you do, and let me just switch over to this briefly. So I always feel gross like pitching courses, and I'm not saying, I think actually you did buy this course, so I'm not kind of like forcing you to buy another, but I would say I'm just going to put this in the chat too. What I would recommend is if you go through this, like expand the different things that are on here. What you can do is if you search for these things on my channel, if you're like, hey, like, I want more information on this and I don't see it on your channel, like, just message me. I'll go make videos on it, right? I can't repeat my exact course. Can't repeat my exact course, but maybe I'm just going to pick something, right? What if we wanted to learn more about, I don't know, like switch statements and switch expressions? Like, hey, Nick, could you go put together another video on this, like demonstrating how we could build an application like that? Like, just message me and I'm happy to try putting more content together like this, okay? So hopefully that helps. But that other playlist I linked is what I'd recommend there. Okay, so... Oh, okay, so the final thing, this is a bit of this part's a little bit of an ad, but so for me, content creation, I said this earlier, like my goal is not to be like a social media influencer. I don't like spending time on social media, despite how much time kind of have to spend on there to create content, but I don't like doing it because all the time that I spend on social media is time that I'm not building software, and like that's what I'm good at. I am not good at these other things. And I shouldn't say that. Shouldn't use the negative self-talk. That's not something that I feel like is the best use of my time, best return on investment. I think building software truly is my best return on investment. So for me, I mentioned this at the very beginning of this stream, but it's like I've been focused on systemizing my content creation. So every time that I'm able to save time, I don't just take the time back and say, oh, thanks, I get a breather, I can just do nothing. I take the time and I go do more, or I do different. I try to optimize. And over time, it's meant that I just keep doing more content things. So I I've been building this system, and I'm saying building a system because I mean like kind of it hasn't been codified until very recently. So I was building out like automation for being able to publish to different places at different times and stuff. And I said, you know what, like this needs to be a full on thing. So I started building this tool called Brand Ghost, and this is what I've been spending more time on recently. So I'll put this in the chat as well. Brand Ghost is the tool that I'm building, that I am. It's literally the system that I use for getting my content out there. So when people, and I get this pretty frequently, where people are like, how do you put out oh, it says my chat died. What's going on, chat? Hopefully we're still there. Sorry, chat. I just sent that link again. I don't know why Restream said the chat was gone. But yeah, I use Brand Ghost to be able to publish all of my content across platforms, right? So that's what I use. It's been a more ad hoc system, but I'm sort of porting over all the logic to be in Brand Ghost because I was hitting limitations with the other things I was doing. So using a bunch of like no code solutions and just kind of being frustrated, like beyond belief. It's worked up until a certain point, and then I'm like, well, I need to make changes, and I'm like, well, now I gotta code it. So like I said, I'm using Brand Ghost. If you are interested in being able to publish content more regularly, at least I'm not saying like, hey, go buy this, go sign up for it. It's great if you're interested, but ultimately this comes back to being able to create valuable, what's called evergreen content. So instead of trying to make viral videos and viral posts, if you look at my content, you might have noticed, you're like, hey, Nick, why are you talking about content? You've never had a viral piece of content ever. You're right. I don't try to write viral content. I don't try to make viral videos. It would be great if any of them went viral, but it's not my goal. My goal is to be consistent and put out helpful content. Does that mean that it's going to be really slow for growth? Sure, perhaps. But am I going to burn out from trying to go, make a new viral video every day? Like, no, I'm able to stay consistent because I'm just putting out content that I think is helpful. Yeah, the profit motive for viral content in the tech sector is incredibly depressing. Yep. Yeah, this is so if you're reading in the chat, right, as of right now, it seems to be people who worked in tech for 2 years now to make clickbait that's generally depressing. So yeah, this is kind of what I was saying earlier about the, if you're going to go learn in public, like that's great, but I've absolutely seen people that will say, hey, look, I landed $100,000 tech job, and now you can buy my course for $1,000 that will help you land a $100,000 tech job. And it's like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm not saying that you can't teach people about that, but like truly, truly, should you be doing that? The example that I love going back to with this, I'm going to use the bodybuilding thing again. I've been in a gym, interested in bodybuilding, powerlifting for a portion of that, but going to the gym consistently between like 6 to 7 days a week. Now I've kind of taken my foot off the gas a little bit metaphorically. So I have had people say to me, hey, look, I'd like to get stronger. I'd like to lose weight. Could you help me with the meal plan? Could you help me with training? If I put my money hat on, yeah, sure, no problem. It's going to cost you $100 for a training plan. And then I would just go to Excel and I would go print out the, the training plan I give everyone. Thanks for the $100. But I don't do that. I don't do that because it's like, that's not, number one, that's not who I am as a person. But number two, like, I don't feel like, even though I have the experience, like, I don't feel like someone should be paying me for that. Like, I'm not a professional at it. A lot of it's anecdotes, my opinion. And I'm like, I'm happy to help you, but like, taking your money for it is just like, morally, I'm not there. And I get it. People have different morals. We're going to have different outlooks on life. But when I see people that have like not really done, and I want to be careful how I say this, but when I feel like someone's not an expert acting like an expert, that really kind of turns me off from what's going on. So integrity goes a long way. Thank you. That was the most succinct way to put what my rambling was. So it's just, yeah, I feel like there's not a lot of integrity in that. That's my personal opinion. If you feel offended by that, I'm sorry. Just, I get it. People are looking to make money every which way they can. Like, totally, I get it. It just doesn't feel right to me. Okay. I think that might be it for the newsletter stuff. I kind of, told you guys about Brand Ghost. And this is why I stopped writing blog articles, just for the record. So when I started saying, you know what, I'm going to take Brand Ghost more seriously and build the code and the service and the infrastructure for this, I don't have time to write articles anymore. So my blog articles have taken a back seat for a few months. When it sounds funny, because like, isn't Brand Ghost supposed to get you your time back? Like, yeah, but I got to build it. I have to take my no-code solution, build it in code, so that I can re-leverage it more effectively. And then will I be able to go back to writing blog articles? Yeah. But like, I'm currently making Brand Ghost. I'm making another course. I work a full-time job. I'm about to start making another course on top of my course. There's a lot going on. So blog articles are one of the things that take the most time and have the least sort of return on just the impact I have in the content space. So those are dropped out for a little bit. But I think it's time to jump over to Reddit. I haven't actually looked at what the topics are at the top of Experienced Devs. But yeah, I'll put the link to the newsletter back in the chat just in case people are you haven't checked it out. But yeah, it's really cool. It's been 52 weeks or 52 issues. Yeah, it's been a journey. It's a lot of work. So it's kind of cool to see that it's slowly getting there. Okay, let's jump over to Reddit. I will get my screen shared here in just a sec. I want to refresh what's going on. This is the time where I remind people on Instagram. I'm very sorry if you're watching this because it starts cutting things out. But let's go over here. By the way, folks, as I'm going through stuff on Reddit, I'm going to be giving you my opinion on different things as we go to read through it. But if you have questions like you've been doing the whole time, just like ask them in the chat. I will, I'll pause what I'm talking about to go answer your stuff. Okay, I literally have not seen any of the topics for today. Another disclaimer, like, I hate Reddit. It makes me feel like, I feel very anxious. So this one seems kind of cool. We'll pull that up. Should I make multiple resumes? Yeah, sure. Let's pull that up. I don't want to talk about that. That seems kind of weird. Yeah, let's look at this one. And this one seems pretty good too. Okay. If you guys also, if you want to share an article and you're like, hey, like, can I get your opinion on this one? Just put it in the chat. Happy to switch over. For the new course, someone asked this the other day on Twitter, and I've never actually confirmed if I'm allowed to share what the topics are. It's not top secret, but at the same time, from like a competitor standpoint, I don't know if it is something I can share. But what I mentioned to people was like, I only make courses about stuff that I talk about a lot, if I can put it that way. So I'm not going to make courses on topics that I like don't have experience with or that I'm not posting about. So it will be, if you're reading my content or watching my videos, like it'll be related to some things that you're seeing there. This one I can probably add. It's not framework specific. It's going to be a C sharp course. I'll say that's a C sharp course. It's not like a tech stack or a framework. It's some concepts from C sharp. I'll say that. So it will be, in terms of like beginner, intermediate, and advanced. It's not going to be super advanced, but it's certainly like not. If you've never used C sharp ever before, like it might seem like a bit of a stretch, but it's probably at the like, early intermediate level, because I don't think the concepts are that complicated once you get into it. So sorry, I'm not trying to be mysterious. I really need to ask Nick Chapsis if I'm allowed to talk about that kind of stuff, just so I don't have to be weird about it. Okay, so this Reddit post: does changing specialization doom your career, your future career? Recently got a new job but in a different specialization, majored in computer engineering. That's what I did. Electronics, embedded system knowledge, but definitely a software engineer by profession. So that sounds exactly like me. Yeah. Started by spending 1 year programming prototypes for medical software. Literally, I did this. Did I write this? One of my earlier internships, I had 2 internships at a company making medical software. I spent the last 5 years an embedded Linux developer. This is where it changes. That's not what I did. But I've recently gotten a new, much better paying job as a DevOps systems engineer. Okay. Sound different, but a lot of my skills actually carried over pretty well. I am not shocked by this. A lot of skills with Linux communication networks and various tools are universally applicable to a lot of roles. Absolutely. So the shift is going to be excellent for me. But what happens after that? Have I neutered my chance of getting better jobs in the future by doing this? Am I now stuck being either a mediocre DevOps or embedded systems guy for the rest of my life? I don't want to, read this word for word, but most of the time when you think of a senior engineer, you think of someone who's an expert in their field. Okay. I have thoughts on this. So, and I will use, like, I have my own biases, right? So I have to use my own personal experiences, but I've shared before that I am pretty conservative when it comes to taking risks, just kind of how I am as a person, which sounds kind of funny. Like, the thought of being complacent makes me nervous. Like, I don't just want to settle and get complacent, but at the same time, like, it's comfortable, right? So in my career, I've had a lot of forcing functions that have made it so that I'm focused in a new domain. And every time it happens, it feels so uncomfortable because I'm like, oh no, I'm junior again, right? I'm right back in the beginning. But that's how it feels. It's not actually what's happening. And every time it happens, I stick with it for a few months, a year, 2 years, and then I go right back to this point of being like, hell yeah, like this was good, this was worth it. And when I read this person's post about like, is this going to kind of screw them over? No, I think the only thing that screws people over is getting complacent, personally. So they called it out, right? They're talking about how some of these skills are transferable. I think that's absolutely the case, right? This is why we talk about like fundamentals, not frameworks. So he's kind of calling out some things that seem applicable. It's like when you learn a programming language, you can go learn another one. So when you think of a senior engineer, you think of someone who's an expert in their field. Like, yes, but like the domain knowledge is one part of it, right? Just to give you an example, the 2 last positions that I've had, including my current one, sorry, I've had at Microsoft, I got hired into Microsoft as an engineering manager over deployment. I have never worked at a company with distributed systems, ever. And they hired me on to do deployment for hundreds of thousands of machines across the world. So, like, the point that I'm getting across here is like, there's a forcing function, and like they hired me as a principal software engineering manager. So it's not like you're screwing yourself over, because you're able to take all of these other skills and experiences and go apply them to a new domain. You build up that domain knowledge. That takes some time for sure, but like the more of these experiences that you have, the more that you pick up a new domain faster, because there's, the unique things about it that you can pick up on. And you do that, you build expertise, and you either stay there and you go super deep, or you repeat the process, right? So I think this person like might be hyper like focused on, do I have to go super super deep? And I think the answer is just like, no, you don't have to. um I think there's a lot of things that you can take out of something. You can extract your learnings and then go apply them to the next situation. So um I like to hear stories from people who haven't just done one thing forever. So I'll share with you folks on the stream, like for me, my first job out of university was building digital forensic software. I had never built digital forensic software in my life. I didn't even know what digital forensics was when I took that job. One of the first meetings, the founder of the company um, pulled three of us that were hired in roughly the same time, three new engineers, and he's like, "Okay, I want to. Do you guys know about like NTFS and FAT32 for file systems?" And I just remember being like, "Oh man, like, what have I gotten myself into?" I'm like, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. No idea. Right. And then it took a little bit of time, and then I was building forensic software. I ended up prototyping with one of the other engineers there. We built a mobile digital forensics tool. It ended up being a competitor to a company that has the monopoly over mobile digital forensics. Like, I had a team of 5 people competing against $1 billion company. And like, I didn't know anything about mobile forensics before. And we started to become like, leaders in this space. Like, we were coming up with, leveraging exploits and things like that to be able to get root access to recover information forensically. Like, it's, you put yourself into these new spaces, and then you're like, I have problems to solve. I'm going to go solve them. Right. So then I mentioned the whole thing with deployment. So that was a very new thing at Microsoft. Now I work in routing and firewalls and caching and things like that. It's a big proxy that we run, and that's extremely new territory for me. Extremely. So it's still going to be some time before I feel like if I can call myself an expert in this area. But I think it's all just about like, once you start getting complacent with something, like, to me, that's where it's dangerous. So it's almost the opposite of what this person's concerned about. That's my thought on this one. Let's jump over. This one might be beneficial for some folks. Just wanted to ask whether I should make resumes focusing on a particular role while applying for jobs. So yes, I think the answer is yes. I'm going to shout out John Vandeveer of Latterly.io. He's probably a good person to ask about this, but my understanding from his perspective is like, for job applications, he recommends the number sounds astronomical, I think, but he was saying like up to 80 applications per week, like 80 is like what he would recommend for people that are basically trying to land their first job. That's a lot of resumes, but one of the things he says is that if you're trying to tune your resume, like, it's really difficult to get any meaningful, like statistically meaningful data on your resume unless you have volume like that. So if you want to be tuning things, like, you might not even know what's working, what's not, unless you have that kind of volume. You might find that if you're very junior, it's hard to go tailor a resume to different companies, because you're like, my experience is pretty limited. Might be zero. So you can talk about projects and things like that you've worked on. And if you have to go tailor that to each company, like, that might seem very difficult. But yeah, I think in general, I would say if you have the material to be able to back that on a resume, that would be helpful to be able to do that, to tailor them. That's a quick one. We'll move on from that one. How much of a pay cut would you take for better dev culture? Um, okay. And the TLDR. All other things being equal, would you take $60,000 pay cut for a better dev culture? And this is a difficult question. I haven't read the body of this yet, but it's a difficult one because $60,000 could be life changing for people, right? So I'm a senior dev at a publicly traded company. Current job's a dream job in a lot of ways, fully remote. I honestly don't work that hard. Don't do crunch time. I can take care of appointments during the day, no problem. It's pretty chill. Cool. Okay. Good. Seems like good work-life balance kind of thing going on here. The problem is work culture. Okay. I like my coworkers. That's a good sign. But processes are totally broken. Often I'll work on a feature for weeks, submit my pull requests, and then some high-ranking designer or product lead will scrap it or request enough changes it's essentially completely new design. Things can end up getting fully designed and implemented 2 to 3 times. Okay. It worked for a full year on 3 different projects where we got 90% of the thing done, and then some guy I've never heard of dropped into our team, tried to tell us there was a change of direction. Okay. At the other extreme, sometimes we'll have arbitrary deadlines and they push us to do shoddy code into production, so they just demonstrate velocity to the CEO. Okay. Some balance, line go up, and that's all that matters. We're practicing share price driven development. The company's also getting more evil, but that's a different topic. Okay, there's a handful of things going on in this one. Part of me, like, there's a part in the middle of this one that seems like it's relatively addressable, but it's a culture thing for sure, as this person calls out. So they said, I'll work on a feature, submit pull requests, and then some high-ranking designer or product lead will scrap it or request enough changes. So, okay, I've talked about this kind of thing before on pull requests. If you notice that this kind of thing happens a lot, so say the first time you do it, you spend 3 weeks on something and this happens, right? Someone's like, hey, scrap it. And you're like, man, that sucks. Like, I just spent 3 weeks on this. That was a really crappy thing to have happen. Okay. So not a good feeling. We get that. Okay. So the next time you go to do something, 3 weeks in, put it up for review, same thing happens again. They go, hey, scrap this thing. It's garbage. Redesign it. What do you think you might do differently time number 3? Like, do you just go repeat the same thing where you're like, okay, I got my new project. I'm just going to go off for 3 weeks and go build it and then put it up for review? Like, personally, I would say probably not, unless you enjoy being disappointed. Like, my recommendation here would be like, what can you do differently? And this person's talking about work culture, and I get it. Like, that sounds like a pretty crappy thing, but like, you're also not helping the work culture if you're not trying to change it. So what I would recommend to this person, and obviously I don't work there, so I'm making assumptions about things, but like, what I would recommend to this person is like, well, why do you have conversations with these people sooner? I don't know if they're open to it, but I would at least start with that. And you could literally be something like, hey, like, I just wanted to reach out. I'm starting on this new thing. I know last time I got pretty far in and it seemed like you wanted some redesigns. I think that it would be beneficial if I could sync with you early. We could get on the same page as much as possible. And that way, maybe I can give you some earlier get some earlier feedback from you so that we can make sure that we're kind of designing things in a way that you want to see. Like, I don't know why those types of conversations aren't happening, right? And there could be many reasons. Maybe it's like, maybe that person is actually a butthead and they're not open to conversations and whatever else. But like, I don't know. I feel like most people don't just try to be, buttheads. They're usually most people are trying to help progress things. So I just feel like there's this opportunity where instead of feeling like, oh, like it's always people coming after me and everything sucks, it's like, I don't want to diminish, these experiences you're having, but like, you literally can do something about this kind of thing. You could start being the solution of the change you want to see, right? So I think that's what I would say for this part here is like maybe be more proactive. Instead of constantly being disappointed by waiting too long to get that feedback, do something sooner. That's part one. Um, this part's interesting. And this, I feel like I've seen some things like this. I'm trying to think of good ways to kind of communicate this. There could be a couple different things going on. Okay, so let's assume that this person's spot on, right? Where like they know a lot about the business, and it seems like they're just wasting time because they go to, um, or maybe it was up here. Sorry, shiny new features, press release. Sorry, I was thinking about this part here, where they're basically canning things, right? Change of direction. I wanted to talk about the change of direction part. So for the change of direction thing, let's assume this person really knows, like, hey, we're working on something, and like it's gonna be really good. And then someone says change direction. Like this can be frustrating because you see the value in it, and you're like, I know that if this is delivered to customers, this is gonna, make a difference. Now, that feels frustrating when people are saying, hey, we're changing direction, because you start to feel like, well, you don't value the same things we do. Like we're so close. We know this is valuable. Why would you tell us to go do something else when we were so confident there was value here? So I think that can be frustrating for people. But here's the other like sort of spin on this I would mention is like we're talking about a business, right? So people people have a hard time with this, especially like as software developers. And I say this being someone who likes to write code, right? The first 8 years I was an engineering manager, I was also a software engineer at the same time. I did both. And it can be really challenging when you're working on stuff and the needs of the business change. Now, I think people have to be open to that. And the sort of the risk is like if you have like dumb people running the business and they're pivoting all of the time and nothing ever gets done, like yeah, that's not a good spot. I mean, it's just not a good spot to be in, right? You never get anything done as a result. But like, is that actually happening or is that an exaggeration? I don't know. We can't tell from this article, or sorry, this post. So I like reminding people that it's entirely possible that a business does have to pivot, right? I spent a lot of time prototyping in my career before Microsoft. I had internships where I was prototyping. I had at the forensics company, I basically ran the team that would prototype things, and we'd go, hell yeah, this is cool. Like we should build a product team around it. And then they would go spin off a product team. But there were absolutely things that we would build. And it's like, that's not going anywhere. Like toss it. And you need to be ready to toss things. So I think something here is like, it's really hard to know the truth of what's going on here. And I totally want to say, like, I can get why this would be frustrating when, you're getting most of the way through something and then there's a pivot. I get it. I think if you want to feel better about this kind of thing, like communication, right? Like go back to your manager and ask, see if there can be more clarification on this kind of stuff. Like you would, at least I would hope that if someone's like, hey, change of direction, we're going to go this way now. Sorry, we got to can this thing. That, yeah, it's going to feel like a little bit demotivating. But at the same time, like if you're hearing the new direction, hopefully you're like, I could see why we're doing that. I want to give you an example, right? Like Microsoft, two huge things at Microsoft right now, Copilot, security. Copilot and security. These two things make a lot of sense. And when we have plans, if someone's like, look, we should be prioritizing Copilot and security, I can rationalize like, hey, look, the thing that we wanted to do that has value, literally as a business, we're saying we want to be more invested into security and Copilot as an entire business. And I can rationalize that makes sense. So like, if you're unable to see that, that's okay, but I think you want to be asking questions like, how can you get to the same spot? And it takes communication from both sides too. So like if leadership at this guy's company, I believe this guy, guy or girl, I don't know, at this person's company, if they're not communicating, they're saying, hey, we're canning it, do this next thing. Like, yeah, that's a really crappy way to do it. So don't get me wrong. I think there's effective ways that you can communicate this, but yeah, it's really hard to tell from this. Oh man, this this thing's way more. I guess the original part here was like about the pay cut, right? Uh, Incoming offer from smaller pre-IPO company. Got a good feeling with the dev culture. Okay, so just on without going into the detail about this stuff, I mean, total compensation 250K, new roles 190K base. There's the 60K drop, right? Um, the way that I look at this is like, and how do you answer this for anyone? Is like, well, and I can't speak on this person's behalf, but it's like, if you were to lose the 60K a year, is that going to change the quality of your life? As in, like, you need to downsize your house. You're not going to be able to afford car payments. You're not going to be able to live the quality of life that you are used to having and that you enjoy. But if you're like, yeah, we were investing a ton and like, or saving a ton. Now we won't be able to put as much away, but like, we can still live and kind of live the lifestyle we want. I might say, well, okay, well, look, like, is your literally, your 8 hours plus a day that you're spending at this place, if that's going to feel better for you and you're like, again, I know the number for some people, like 190K, like seems like a lot. And I mean, that is great pay for sure. But some people like, they're kind of spending what they're making at the same time too. So it's situational. If this person's okay with that pay cut, it might be a really good move for them to get sort of that, I don't know, what they're looking for in that dev culture. Now, are they actually going to get that dev culture they want? Like, who knows? They might switch and being enticed by it, and it's truly not what they were hoping for. So it's hard to say. I think it's a gamble in either case. But yeah, I think for a lot of people, and like I said, it's situational. But I think for a lot of people, 60K a year could be life changing. It could be a pretty big impact. So you might say, hey, you know what? Like, maybe work is a little bit less enjoyable. Maybe, I don't know. Or only in some cases, but like the 60K a year outside of work is going to make that much more of a difference for us that it's worth it. Or you might say the opposite way where you're like, look, if we're going to lose the 60K a year, we're still making enough, we're happy, and truly my time at work will be more enjoyable. So out of my 24 hours in the day, 8 of those hours won't be like, oh, I hate this. It'll actually be like, hey, this is pretty cool and exciting. So I think those are personal questions that people have to ask. So that's how I would approach that one, though. That's my thought. At this point in time, for me, it's tricky because for 60K a year, I'm probably not rushing to make changes at this point. And I think that's because if I ask myself this honestly, like, let's say there was another job that was going to pay, well, I'm okay where I'm at in terms of work. So the opposite situation, there's 60K more to go work somewhere that was promising even better work culture. I'm like, you know what? Like, I don't have a problem where I'm at right now. So it's almost like the 60K extra, if I say it the opposite way, right? That 60K extra is uncertainty. So it might be really good if I was in a similar situation that I was at the beginning of the year, where it's like, hey, look, I'm ready for a change. Cool. Like, more money and it's a different environment. Like, I'm ready for a change. I'm personally not, though, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. So is 60K going to make me move? Like, for me personally, no. But that's just because of my current life situation. It's going to be different for everyone. So I think these are questions you have to ask yourself, ask your partner. So hopefully that helps. Okay, this one seems funny. I feel like I resonate with this one and I haven't even read it. Keep getting more and more responsibilities, but I'm reaching my limit. Okay. I joined my current company during the COVID hiring spree with 7-year-old, three-ish of those as a software engineering manager. Oh, sorry, 7 years of experience, as a software engineering manager. However, I worked very niche in-house software. Don't have much experience marketing myself effectively. So, okay, so they have an entry-level role as a result. They said within 6 months, manager realized Indeed competent. Okay. Oh, okay. And then their manager left shortly after. He was able to and financial independence, retire early. Congrats. Okay, great. So, and I got promoted to manager given my past experiences. Cool. Okay. So this person took an entry level job. Now they're the manager. I'm now sitting at about 10 years of experience with about 4 to 5 of that as a manager. Okay. Because I had that 3 extra years of being a manager, basically. At the beginning of this year, the size of my team doubled. Yeah. Our department recently had a bit of a reorg, new VP. Add more teams. I'll be appropriately compensated. And since I was just promoted, it'll be a tough squeeze for another promotion. I don't want to do this. Okay. That's the problem. I don't want to do this. Until now, I've been able to do all this work with minimal effort. My company, particular engineering departments, like to blow out stuff out of proportion, act like things take longer than they do. I'm just going to have to do more and more. And I just feel like my boss and his boss are relying on me way too much. So this is interesting because I think some people, especially earlier on in their tech careers, are like, got to chase the higher levels, got to do this, got to level up, got to become principal staff, distinguished engineer, like, just chasing these things. And even from some podcast interviews I've done, I realize there's more and more people that are like, look, we aren't about that life. Or people I've interviewed are saying like they've had colleagues where they're like, some people were saying that they have colleagues that were turning down promotions because they didn't want the extra responsibility. And that blew my mind. I've never heard that. I believe this was in India. This was some situations like this where people were like, no, thank you on the promotion. No, I'm good. I'm like, what do you mean? So that's pretty interesting. This person's saying, just feeling overwhelmed because of how fast everything's been moving. I'm getting squeezed too hard by the people above me. Okay, so first of all, just to answer their question, I think like you got to be open and transparent with people, right? What's going to happen if this person's not communicating that effectively is like they'll be in a situation where like they have expectations put on them and they're kind of crumbling under them. They're unable to meet their current expectations. And like, what do you think's going to happen? It's going to look bad. They're going to have their management confused and concerned. Like, so instead of like waiting for that to happen, like I think you need to have a conversation about it, which it's obviously easier said than done. But I think like a lot of things I will always come back to are communication. Like if you're sitting here asking the internet, you just wrote a mini novel. You're asking people on Reddit, of all places, what should I do here? I think if you're doing this kind of thing, you're probably in a position where you should be having a conversation with your manager and trying to be transparent about this kind of stuff. And I say this, like I said, knowing it's far easier said than done, but you're gonna talk to people on Reddit and you're gonna have to take some course of action based on what they're saying, and at some point you're probably gonna have to talk to someone about it. So like, why not why not lean into that? And they kind of say it in here, right? I don't think that I really want to be a director, at least not yet. I think I'm okay with being a director in 5-ish years, but right now everything's moving too fast. I would tell your manager that. Because what's going to happen is if they need someone in that position, should they be going to hire it? They might be able to keep you as a manager, keep your responsibilities the same, hire in a director, do something. But otherwise, they're like, hey, this guy's doing great. He's the best fit we got right now. Like, let's do it. So I think you have to be transparent about that stuff. That's my thoughts. I thought this was kind of interesting, though, because, like, this, it resonates with kind of some experiences I had. So um, when I started at Microsoft, I had 8 years of managing teams. If you count my internships, because those were in industry, that was like 10 years of being a software engineer, and 8 of those years being a software engineer managing teams. So kind of like similar amount of experience, but for me, 8 years of managing teams. And then uh, this I thought was funny. At the beginning of this year, the size of my team doubled. So on the deployment team at Microsoft, I inherited a whole second team. They just said, "Here you go. Like, here's another deployment team." So I had two deployment teams. And I should clarify, when I say deployment team, my manager had the overall umbrella over deployment, but I had one of the deployment teams plus another deployment team that was given to me. So that's slightly just, for clarification there. So I doubled, I just had a whole separate team. They had a whole different tech stack. It was just a different deployment team. So let's see. They keep challenging with more and more. Okay, so and then I also had a reorg too. So basically, before that happened, my manager left, and I don't mean that in a negative way. He had a really good opportunity, so he moved over to that. So I didn't have a manager. I was reporting to my skip level. I was given this extra team. Then I had a new manager brought on, and then a few months after, we reorged. So I had this new team. I have a new manager. Like, I've been working with her for a bit, and then we switched VPs. So, like, a lot of change. And this person says, I'll be appropriately compensated. And since I was just promoted, I didn't get. I basically got another team and did not get promoted, did not have a compensation change. So I don't know. Like, I'm very much opposite to this person, where it's like, look, like, I would be loving to demonstrate this. This person's like, I don't want to be a director, at least not yet. 5-ish years, but I'm at the point now for me where, personally, like, I'm managing engineering teams, but I think I'm at the point where if I could be managing managers, like, that's my next step. I'm kind of looking forward to being able to do that. So it's hard for me to read this because I've had some similar experiences here, and I'm like, man, like, this, I'm way too lazy for it. Right? I don't want to do all this work. I'm way too lazy for it. But yeah, like, so Laura Beth, you're saying, like, seems like a nice problem to have. It's like, that's my take on this, is like, I'm like, dude, like, I'd be okay with this. But I think the part that I want to convey here to the audience is, like, not everyone's like that. That's okay. It seems kind of funny. So yeah, I have a difficult time resonating with this one, which is fine, but I do think the takeaway that I have reading what this person wrote is, like, you're going to have a conversation with someone, and the longer you wait, the harder it is, because it seems like someone's not observing that about this person, right? They're not observing that this person is getting stressed out, like, it's not working well for them. They're probably like, hey, like, this is going okay. Here's more responsibility. So, like, maybe that's not what you want to keep encouraging. So I would just tell this person, maybe speak up. Yeah, I think that's my take. Okay, folks, it's 10 minutes left in the stream before I got to sign off for bed. I haven't seen many questions coming in the chat, but maybe I'll take this moment as I'm kind of wrapping up what I have to say. If there's any last minute questions, I'm happy to take them. But yeah, this I know this stream was a little bit different because I focus on the content creation stuff. But I have been trying to do my Monday night streams related to my newsletter, just to kind of tie it together. It's been kind of a theme I've been doing. So that one was kind of celebrating my 52 weeks of newsletter stuff. So sorry if you were watching this and you're like, that doesn't feel relevant to me. But, my reminder there is, like, I do think that content creation can be a very interesting opportunity, and it does not have to be about how am I making money directly from my content or how do I grow the biggest audience. Honestly, the networking part alone can be tremendous, but the biggest sort of barrier with content creation is just being consistent with it. So that's my piece of encouragement there. If you are on the fence about it, I would say just start and don't stop. You know, start, take it slow. You don't want to burn out from it, and then once you're in the groove of it, try to add a little bit more. Do you think a degree is necessary if someone has 2 years of experience? I currently have AS and CS, but I don't have a lifestyle that allows me to finish at a well-ranked university. I'm in the USA. Could do something like WGU, but if it's not going to be necessary for jobs, I'd rather self-teach and do more at work. Like, yes and no, right? I think one of the problems or challenges, okay, a couple things going on here. So I think in a good way, I think that there are more companies being open to not sort of setting the bar as like you must have gone to university or college. I think that's a positive thing because it means that there's more people from different walks of life and stuff are able to get into software development. I think that's overall positive. So I want to kind of clear that up. I think one of the big challenges is that it's extremely competitive right now, extremely. So, and whether or not you think this is right or wrong, I'm not saying it's good or bad, just for the record. I need to be very transparent about that. Whether or not you agree, right or wrong, good or bad, I think what's happening at a lot of places is that because there's so much volume of resumes, do you think that people who need to get through more volume of resumes are going to set the bar higher? Right? And what I mean by that is like, if someone, and I want to keep reiterating, I'm not saying good or bad, right or wrong, but if someone has college or university, that might stand out more than someone who is just self-taught. And I'm not the person who's looking through the resumes, and sometimes it might not even be the recruiters, it might be the automated systems that are looking for these things. So I do think depending on where you're applying, that can make a huge difference because say it was some of the bigger tech companies, they might be using systems that are like when you're submitting and you're going through their portal, if you're not checking off post-secondary education, they might be like, well, there's a thousand other applicants that do have it. So like we've just set the bar there. So what worries me is that I'm working full time, so unable to finish at a well-ranked state university. Um, my I want to share this with you, and I don't think I'm necessarily alone in saying this, but like I have never cared what school someone went to, like ever. I've never looked at grades. I've never looked at which school. Like I will be doing interviews at Microsoft. Like I have to do interviews on Wednesday. I don't know any of the U.S. schools. That's not true. I know a couple of them that stand out, like Harvard and MIT. Like I know some schools, but that's like I don't care. It's like, does it stand out to me if someone went to college or university? Sure. I'm not opposed to people that go to boot camps and stuff like that either. But my point is like, it's just nice to see that someone did further learning, right? Someone's like, I'm investing myself into this. And that stands out to me. So, I wouldn't be concerned about going to a well-ranked state university. I do think, again, I'm going to lean on John Vandeveer of Latterly.io. I do think he has some stats that indicate that can be beneficial, but at the same time, like, I don't think that that's one of the things you want to like hyper optimize and try to be concerned about. Like, if you don't have time for it, or it's going to be too challenging. Like, okay, I would say like park that thought and like, what else can you be doing? You only have so much time and resources. What could you be doing to try and stand out more, right? So whether that's taking that extra time, whether it's, if it's minimal, like you're going to build some stuff and document it, like that could be an option. But or you're going to do, like, some people like to do like certifications and stuff online, right? Some people will say, well, certs are useless. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not hiring people for their certificates, but if you were getting them, again, it shows me that you're trying to learn stuff. So like, personally, that's what I'm kind of interested in, is that people are just trying to constantly learn and improve, because that's what we need to be doing as software engineers. And any quick advice to those trying to get their first software engineering job? So I think it depends on what part. Thank you, Manoj. Manoj, I'm sorry I don't know how to pronounce your name properly, but I appreciate it. Any quick advice? So it depends what stage you're at. And I know you're saying first software engineering job, but what I mean by first, what state is, are you at the point where you are trying to get recruiters to respond to you? Because if you are, this is like the very first stage. And I'm going to put some links in the chat. I have 3 live streams that I did on this 3 weeks in a row, and I'm just looking for them. So give me, pardon me. I can tell my, the COVID vaccine, like, makes me feel like I can tell my Advil's wearing off because I'm coughing and like, I'm not sick. I don't know what's up. This one, so there's 3 live streams. I'm going to share the links. So this is stage 1. And so this one, I speak about trying to stand out. So like, if you're at the stage where like, I'm not even getting people to respond to me, like, this is me talking about things that you could be doing to stand out. The next part is if you are getting noticed and you need to do your interviews, this is the second part. And the third part is here, coming right up. And I broke these into 3 different discussions because I think the focus that you need to have in each of these 3 phases is different. As much as I would love for that third stage is once you're actually working, what should you be doing? I would love if the first 2 stages were essentially the same thing, right? Just do the software engineering stuff. It's going to help. The problem is for stage 1, like, you're trying to get noticed. So like, what do you need to be doing to even be visible to recruiters and getting your resume through stuff? Like, that's a different set of skills than even the next stage, which is like, you're, as much as I don't like it, you're probably doing something like lead code problems in your interview, right? Like a system design question or like a lead code style question. Behavioral interviews make a lot of sense to me. But sometimes you have to like skill up on these interview questions. So I think to answer your question, I think it kind of depends on what stage you're at. But even if you don't want to watch those live streams all the way through, you can watch them at 2x speed, maybe, whatever. I do think that I still recommend the approach kind of looking at these 3 segments. So I hope that helps clarify, but it's about getting noticed, step 1. Step 2 is like how you go about practicing for your interviews and the different skills you need there. And then stage 3 is you got the job. How do you start doing that job effectively? But I think that's it, folks. So I hope that was informative, and if I get to bed on time, I should be able to stream at 7 a.m. PST. I'm going to be building in C#. I'm going to be using quartz.net. I have used it briefly before. I feel like I am not experienced enough at using it effectively. I have to refactor a large part of code. And I need, or I shouldn't say I need, I am interested in using quartz.net for job scheduling. So before I go do a big refactor to put quartz.net in, I want to be able to try it out. So that's what I'm going to be doing in the morning. If you're able to join, that's great. If not, all of these get recorded. They're on YouTube. So you never have to worry if you like miss one of these and you want to catch up. No big deal. That's what I'll be doing in the morning. So thank you so much for joining in. Like I said, I hope you found it helpful. If you don't join tomorrow morning, I hope to see you next Monday. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your week. Don't have too much fun, but make sure you